Hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Rachel Gabel. Rachel is a longtime agriculture writer and the assistant editor of the Fence Post magazine. Well, Rachel, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. I appreciate it.
Well, Rachel, you have extensive experience reporting on agriculture. Have the attacks on agriculture, especially meat, increased in recent years?
Oh, absolutely. And it's easy to feel in agriculture like the sky is falling because it is an easy industry to attack. I mean, the animal rights activists have a strong message and it's very emotional. So that's certainly an easy attack, and the legislature has had plenty of attacks come through there as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially with the Colorado's changing politics. I know the first gentleman is a proud vegetarian and is behind at least vocally kind of supportive of a lot of these efforts. Unfortunately, we saw Governor Jared Polis at the Meat Out Day several years ago bring a whole bunch of the impossible whoppers to an event, kind of trying to make the point that, hey, maybe we should move on from the meat industry here in Colorado. So it's really unfortunate to see, people from our governor's office down to the state legislature, especially the election of one of our more recent state legislators down there, Manny Rutinel, who's a total animal activist and kind of anti-agricultural activist, unfortunately.
Very much so. His name tends to be on a lot of bills that are very damaging to agriculture.
And it's so, it should be surprising. Maybe it shouldn't be surprising for me, but it seems, agriculture is such an important foundation for our life. People got to eat. Especially here in Colorado in the western part of the United States, we're such a big ranching and farming communities that we have for our state government to kind of go against some of that. It's like it seems so anti-Coloradan to me. It can, I guess it's more shocking than it should be.
Yeah, it certainly is, especially in Denver, where it was truly built on the backs of the stockyards and on Denver Union Stockyards Company and on the Packers. That used to be very central to Denver and huge part of the economy. And so Denver is truly a cow town at its core. And you know, you mentioned when Governor Polis brought Impossible Whoppers to an event that was actually to a Department of Agriculture meeting with the full staff of the Department of Ag. And his message was that we should look beyond just beef to the plant based movement. And of course, we don't grow a lot of coconut fiber or soybeans here in Colorado, but we do grow a lot of beef. It's our largest export in the state. So that was kind of the first shot fired against agriculture, and it's not let up a bit since then.
Well, this November, Denver voters will decide to ban slaughterhouses in Denver city limits. In your article for the Gazette, you outlined how this will shut down one of the country's only lamb processing plants, which produces about 20% of the nation's lamb harvest capacity. Why are they pushing this?
Well, they're just pushing it because they feel like it's distasteful. It's they want to end animal agriculture, and a good way to start is with the processors. And I think a lot of people see that and think, well, slaughterhouses in city and county of Denver, well, there's none of that. Well, there is. And it's Superior Farms, and it is about 20% of the lamb processing capacity in the entire country. And it's a huge market share for the producers, the lamb producers here in the West, which is significant. We're one of the largest lamb feeders in the country. And so to shut down, it's unacceptable just to target one business to shut it down. And it's unacceptable to target it just because it's it's not as warm and fuzzy as you would like it to be. Anytime we legislate what's on people's plates, we're treading into dangerous territory. And this is a scary one. I mentioned that Superior Farms is about 20% of the lamb slaughter capacity in the country. It's one of the few uh, fabricators as well. So a lot of folks, there's another processor up here in my neck of the woods in northeastern Colorado, and that's basically just a breaker. So they're bringing things down into primals and subprimal cuts and then sending them on to the East Coast to breakers or to fabricators so that things are processed and ready to like what you would see in the grocery store. But Superior is different. That's what they do there. So it's not only taking away jobs, but it's and not just the folks at the plant there, but there's a lot of different jobs that are being affected, but it's also taking away local food. It's making that more difficult. So the voters in Denver are going to have to decide what they feel is more important. If they're more willing to align themselves with animal extremists, or if they believe in food security and business and allowing folks to make a living and come here. A lot of the people that work there, the company is employee owned. And that's a huge thing to take away from someone is ownership in a company. And a lot of these folks came here to this country for a better life, and we're taking away this generational prosperity. And I think that's just deplorable.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that people would go to this extent to try and shut down this business. Like you said, it's an employee-owned business. I read that it was about 150 people that work there directly. It's been around for 70 years. I mean, it's definitely a fixture of the community, and like you said, providing this intergenerational wealth and creating this industry here in Denver. But I also thought it was really interesting. You said that people don't realize it happens here in Denver, right? I mean, especially in this day and age. You think of meat processing or Denver being a cow town, a lot of people think, generations in the past, right? Kind of that more Wild West. I think for the average, Denver suburbanite or urbanite down there, they probably don't realize this rich agricultural history that Denver has. And they don't realize it's still continuing today.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge part. The lamb industry alone is a huge part of Colorado's history. Some of the best stories about history here in Colorado center on some of those Greek ranchers that came here with nothing and started running sheep in the western part of the state. If I remember correctly, the land where one of the bases of one of the first ski lifts was actually owned by a Greek rancher, and it was surveyed incorrectly. So the folks who put in the ski lift had to go back and try to buy this property from this rancher, and he was a tough cookie, and he was a tough egg to crack. But it's a great story, and there's lots of them. There's a lot of heritage and a lot of history, and it's frustrating to see that extremists are attacking that successfully just by just feeling like the business is yucky and they don't like it. So I just think that's a ridiculous reason to put a company out of business and to put all of these folks out of a job. It's not just the folks at the plant. It's the guys that are driving trucks with lambs to Denver. It's the ones driving the meat to the grocery store. It's the grocery stores. It's the ranchers. There's lots and lots of different pieces to this. It's not just the folks who work there at Superior.
Well, that's a good point. I know you referenced a CSU study in your recent article showing that could be a reduction of $861 million in economic activity. This was kind of that worst case scenario, and a loss of nearly 2,800 jobs from this slaughterhouse ban. I mean, that's incredible.
It is. It's significant. And it takes away a huge market share from the lamb producers here in the West, not just in Colorado, but in Wyoming as well, into Utah, because this is where they're coming. So that would force all of those producers to find another point of market access to be able to come up with this consumer ready lamb product. And it's just not here. And a lot of folks say, well, the Superior could just relocate. They could. I don't think that they would. It would cost billions to replace this shackle space, to replace this processing space elsewhere. I can't imagine that they would do it in Colorado, just based on the political winds a blowing here. But if they did, it would cost millions, if not billions, to replace it. And I just don't think they would. I think it would just be lost processing capacity. And that's detrimental to producers. It's detrimental to consumers. And these folks in Denver, these voters are claiming that they believe in business and they believe in local foods and they believe in food security. So if you believe in those things, then you would not vote to close this business. It's bizarre.
So say the ban is successful. I mean, we talked a little bit about that economic impact, but what would consumers be should be prepared for? You know, is the price of lamb going to increase dramatically here in Colorado? Does this? I understand the Superior company there provides a lot of the lamb in Colorado. I mean, nationwide, of course, but is it the majority of lamb that they're producing here in Colorado as well?
It is. It's the majority of it. They provide to wholesale and retail, and I think all of the Whole Foods, maybe lamb comes from there. And I would say anytime you see any sort of Colorado lamb, it's going to come from Superior because they're, like I said, they're the only processor that's a fabricator as well, which just means that they're the ones that are packaging things ready for consumers, ready for the meat case. So it's a dangerous thing to cave into the whims of extremists, and that this has so many unintended consequences. This isn't just a let's shut down this business because we don't agree with it.
Yeah, and I just keep coming back to this idea that, agriculture, food production, it's the foundation of civilization, right? I mean, for thousands of years, you got to have farmers, ranchers, you have to have people producing food in order for humans to live. So it's just of all the things to for people to go after, of all these political topics that we deal with these days, it just seems so bizarre that there's this group of extremists, like you call them, just fixated on this idea of shutting down meat production, one of the oldest industries on earth, one of the most important aspects to living a healthy, well-balanced life.
But yeah, you know, years ago when Kitty Monfort ran what's what was Monfort at the time, um, they had a feed yard that was just north of Greeley. And of course, the smell of Greeley and all those jokes. My family says it smells like money, but some people complain about it. But anyway, they were trying to run him out of town, run him out of Weld County, run him out of Greeley. And so, as the story goes, he stamped all of the cash. He paid everybody in cash that week and stamped them all with Monfort. I don't know if it was with Monfort or an M or what. Paid all of his employees in cash, and then told the folks that were trying to get rid of him, you go and you find a business that doesn't have a Monfort bill in their till, and I'll leave town. They did not leave town.
Oh, wow, that is an incredible story. I love that. I love that idea of being able to track the money that this company is generating and then seeing how it gets dispersed in the community and how valuable it is. I mean, what a perfect illustration. That's brilliant.
Oh yeah, they're these are folks that are being paid, making their living through the dignity of hard work. They're doing a skill. This isn't, I won't call it an art, but it's certainly a craft that you have. It's not, you and I couldn't go in and do this. It would be a mess. But that money is leaving their calloused hands, and it's going to the banker and the mortgage company and the gas company and the electric company and all of these different places, the gas station attendant and the drugstore and the general store and the bar and wherever else it needs to go to. And then it's also being paid to the guys who are pushing the stock up and down the alleys, to the USDA inspector who is there and sees every carcass that comes through there, the driver who's hauling off the byproducts, the one who's buying the hides or making the dog treats from the byproducts, and the one who is packing the trucks with boxes, and the company that they're buying the boxes from, and the company that's supplying the trucks, and the guy who's driving the trucks. It just keeps going and going and going. And that's not even to mention the folks that have uh the that are in the plant who are we're taking away a chance at generational prosperity. They can replace the job, but to replace something, this ownership would be very difficult.
Wow. Yeah, it's so interesting to see this. I mean, I really hope that Denver voters kind of see past some of this propaganda and realize how detrimental this ban would be and how important it is to the city. Like I keep coming back to the idea that a lot of people aren't aware of what a big impact this would have. throughout Denver and throughout Colorado. And unfortunately, sometimes what happens in the rest of Colorado is kind of left up to those voters or politicians in Denver, unfortunately. But I think there's a good effort out there to get awareness raised about this issue and get voters mobilized to stand up for Colorado's meat industry and defeat this November measure.
Absolutely. And standing up for consumers too. I mean, gosh, we believe in local food around here, and we believe in innovation, and we believe in food security and local food, and to take that off people's plates is just uh, far beyond what a ban like this should be able to do.
So, this is the most recent example of this attack on meat. How do you see this fitting into the larger context of we kind of touched on that at the beginning, but this larger context of this nationwide or even international push to get people away from eating meat, red meat in particular, and kind of shift our entire culture away from that towards these, uh, you know, uh, plant-based alternatives, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Sure. Well, it's kind of a strange thing because there's never been higher demand for animal protein. It's still extremely popular. It's not going away anytime soon. But where the extremists are successful is with the emotion of their message. So, we've seen plant-based products, and we've seen um, like not just like black bean burgers, but like plant-based alternatives of some sort that look like they're bleeding. And I mean, it's just bizarre and very ultra processed, and lots of things that I can't pronounce, certainly. And so that's a strange thing for me. It's hard to wrap your brain around that they would think, what I would like instead of this black bean burger or this lamb or this beef. I would like this ultra processed, very unhealthy product that I can't pronounce, and it costs a lot more. And that's a bizarre thing. And then of course we talk a little bit about lab meat, which is strange. The Department of Defense actually had millions of dollars in their budget to pay for the development and the creation of lab-based meat, which would come from like cell cultured, which was really strange. And the Department of Defense did drop that. But I even in visiting with folks that aren't involved in production agriculture, who are further removed than I am, certainly, I can't imagine any of them saying that they would prefer the ultra processed or the mystery lab cell cultured products. So where these extremists are very effective is the lambs are just like puppies, and they're so cute, and it's easy to do with lambs, right? It's a little harder with fat cattle. Lambs are cute and cuddly and fuzzy and adorable, and that's just not the case. But they're able to bank on emotion very effectively.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it seems to be their best tactic, like you said, is these anti-meat extremists kind of using that emotional argument of, you don't want to, you've seen it, I guess, with PETA for years and other groups like that. You wouldn't want to eat your dog or your cat. Look how wonderful they are. Let's extend those kind of same feelings towards more traditional meat producing animals like lamb and cows and everything like that. So yeah, it's that's the best argument they got, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I reported last week there was a billboard in Casper, Wyoming, of all places, put up by PETA, that had a chicken with like a machine gun. And it said, if red meat doesn't get you, I might, which was really a bizarre thing. And they were banking on folks being afraid to eat meat or drink milk because of the avian flu, which is killed by pasteurization, which has been around for 100 years. Yay, pasteurization. But I thought it was so strange that it was such a fear mongering thing. And I ran the article, and PETA actually emailed me and said, this is a real human health concern, and you need to fix your article. And I dug through all of the CDC information on avian influenza, and they're saying, half the people that have contracted it have died. And it's just not true. I'm not sure where the information is coming from, but it's easy to twist things the way you want them to be heard.
That's true. Well, just talking a little bit about that avian flu, I mean, what's the real risk there? I saw you also reported a little while ago, I think it was earlier this month or maybe last month, about these, was it 2 million chickens that were culled here in Colorado for fear of avian flu? And so what's the real story here? Should people be worried about this? I mean, are we going to see any shortage of poultry products, or what can you tell us about this?
I would not be afraid of any poultry products. First off, there's no reason to fear your food. But the thing about the egg business here in Colorado is that they're still reeling from again a animal extremist pushed initiative to get all of the eggs in Colorado be sold that come from a cage-free environment. So the poultry, the table egg industry here in Colorado has had to just spend billions to retrofit all of their facilities so that they match this cage-free space requirements. So on top of that, now we have avian influenza that is not a human health concern, but it is deadly to chickens. So they have to go through and destroy them. The thing about poultry is that they mature very quickly to a laying age. So it's easier to recover than say cattle because it's just faster. But as far as in dairy cattle, uh, pasteurization kills it. So as long as you're not drinking raw milk, I think there's uh, very little chance that you would have any access to it. And it sounds like in people, it looks a lot like pink eye. So it's certainly not this horrible, awful disease, but pasteurization, of course, kills it. And then with the chickens, um, they can test it very, very quickly through all of the sensors that they have. So within 48 hours, they're able to stop those eggs from going out. And any eggs that are close, they would just send through a pasteurizer and make into the little, the little paper cartons of like the egg yolk or the whites. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's a pasteurized product of egg whites. So that's where those eggs would go. And then
Hmm.
of course it would not be in the meat either. So it's frustrating and it's very financially challenging for those producers, but I don't believe that it's a risk to consumers at all.
Oh, good. Well, that's good to hear. So yeah, these alarmism, alarmist cries we've seen about avian flu, we can kind of dismiss some of that. Of course, it seems like the industry is very responsive and doing everything they can to contain the issue and make sure that consumers are protected, like you said, through that pasteurization process.
Oh yeah, our state veterinarian is Maggie Baldwin, Dr. Maggie Baldwin, and she's been on this like on top of it. This is all she's almost all she's done for 2 years now. And they're very responsive. And like in dairy cattle, they can check on the rumen um, activity. And so that's one of the first things to go down is the rumen activity. So through those sensors, they're able to tell before there's any other symptoms that it's being affected. It's a testament to how well these facilities are run and how careful the animal health is monitored.
Oh, interesting. Earlier you mentioned a demand for meat is kind of the highest it's ever been, and I really see that, especially among young people. It seems like there's kind of that rejection. Maybe we saw 10, 20 years ago, where there's a lot of like vegan or vegetarian kind of subculture kind of forming. Maybe more in the 90s, dating myself here a little bit, but maybe back more in the 90s, where people were really kind of pushing that agenda, it seems. And nowadays, it seems like so many young people, especially on social media, they're all about eating farm raised meat. This kind of just local meat and beef, and you see beef everywhere on social media with these younger people, and kind of that's like the new kind of trend, new health trend. Of course, we've seen that with like the paleo or primal or Atkins diet, even. So it's kind of interesting to see, as you said, the politicians or these bureaucrats or extremists kind of fighting against the market, fighting against the culture that is there's a very pro meat culture that we have that I feel like is growing. And it's just another example of these politicians with their extremist backers kind of trying to go against the public and kind of redesign society according to their wishes. This kind of social engineering scheme where they're trying to do everything they can politically or legislatively to really restrict meat production and meat consumption and move towards this other agenda.
Yeah, it's an incredibly small fraction of society that's actually following like the vegan or the animal rights extremists. It's a very small part of the population, but they're vocal. So that's that's been a challenge for sure.
Well, awesome. Well, Rachel, I really appreciate your time today. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss?
You know, there's a number of bans on the ballot this year, including a fur ban, which is not the first time we've seen this. It's also in the city and county of Denver, which would affect, the sale of beaver cowboy hats at the National Western Stock Show and hand-tied fly fishing flies and at the March powwow, a number of items that are sold there. So I think that that's misguided as well. And then, of course, there's also going to be on the statewide ballot a ban on mountain lion, bobcat, and lynx hunting. Lynx is federally and state protected, so it really just makes the fuzzy trifecta there. It's actually just mountain lions and bobcats. And I think it's important that we recognize, especially with the disastrous wolf release, that ballot box biology doesn't belong in the hands of voters. It belongs in the hands, very capable hands of the hundreds of wildlife biologists in Colorado Parks and Wildlife. So I think it's important to realize that we need to put that management where it belongs, and whether that's through the meat processing ban in Denver or the bobcat and mountain lion hunting ban statewide. I think we need to just look at it from the bigger picture and recognize that non-management isn't management, and taking away opportunity is never a positive.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, we didn't even get into the whole wolf debacle. That's definitely a subject for another time. It's just interesting to see how that's playing out and how, the proponents back then were really making things seem like it's going to restore this natural ecosystem, this natural balance to society. But obviously, that's not the reality that we're seeing. And a lot of people are losing cattle, losing their animals. And yeah, it's getting to the point where, some of these wolves are just going to be, shot because they're going to be caught attacking animals, attacking livestock, and it's just creating a whole new set of problems, unfortunately.
It is, and that's being compounded by Colorado Parks and Wildlife leadership's um, unwillingness, their refusal to manage wolves and to do what they said they would do. And of course, if we got into wolves, we'd be here for another week talking. But it's been disastrous, and I hope that voters keep that in mind when they're asked to make decisions that I'm certainly not qualified to make. And I think I'm probably closer to a lot of these things than perhaps a suburban or an urban voter. So I wouldn't want to take that out of the hands of the experts and put it in the hands of anyone else. So it's something to be aware of. And yeah, we'll have to talk about the wolves another day.
Oh, I'd love to. Well, Rachel, I'll make sure to share your most recent articles, especially about the Denver slaughterhouse ban, but definitely encourage people to go to thefencepost.com and keep up to date on Colorado's agriculture news. And I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks. Another spot is Colorado Politics in both gazettes. You can find my columns in there every week. And of course, there's a wolf one this week.
Oh, great. I'll have to check that out. Awesome.
Thanks for having
Well,
me, Brandon. I appreciate it.
yeah, thank you so much, Rachel. I appreciate your time and take care.